Well, God bless you, and God bless you. This is Bishop Pelt, and we declare that this is the day the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. And we are so excited that you've allowed us to come and be with you again on another Teaching Tuesday. I was out last week traveling. I'm sorry, I'm talking loud here and doing about 2 or 3 things at the same time, but was out last week, and I wanted to say thank you, and I want to give a special shout out to the wonderful people of the Delmarva, D.C. region who were just so kind to me last week as I came to share with them the Word of God, to Bishop Stan Holder and to the wonderful First Lady of the region. She and the team were incredible, and I hope that I was a blessing to you as you were to me. Today, we are here. We want to just let you know how much we love you and how much we appreciate you being with us as we're closing out this year. Can you believe we are now at October, almost November and December, and we are just looking so forward to what the Lord is doing and what He's going to do as we close out this year. But I also wanted to say thank you for your support all this year for Teaching Tuesday. As you know, we want you to share it. We want you to let people know that we're here on Teaching Tuesday today, and that we would hope that the topics and people we bring have been a blessing to you all year. If you know of someone you would like for us to talk to or meet in the next year, please let us know, as we're already trying to work on 2022. We would be most appreciative. Listen, just want to make you aware of a few things. As you know, we will be going into the month of November, and in November we have a wonderful day that we set aside for our youth convention. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we're not meeting live, and so we're asking you to be with us on November 13th, 5:30 on that wonderful evening. Bishop Gowdy will be with us and sharing wonderful gifts and talents across the state. But we want you to be with us at that. And listen, folks, this is important. This technically is Bishop Gowdy's last youth convention as youth director. So we want you to make sure you put a special gift and put a special love gift toward him and his lovely wife, Lady Mary Ann, and the work they have been doing. And I believe you will be blessed by it. Number 2, let me just also say this month is Minister or Pastor or Ministers Appreciation Month. Let me say thank you to all of you ministers who have been so faithful carrying out the gospel all through this season. COVID, this, that, and the other happening. You have been faithful, and I want to say thank you, thank you, thank you. Your labor is not in vain, and there is not only a great reward coming, but I believe people will be sowing into your life as we close out even this month. You are worthy. Many of you are worthy of double honor, and I just pray that you who are members, if you have a great pastor, if you have a great ministry team, will you please take the time to sow into their lives and let them know how much you appreciate their gift to you and what God has called them to do and serving you. As we move into the close of this year, listen, we're in a wonderful quarter of ministry. And this is a great time to start buying gifts. Listen, you can buy gifts. As you know, the Church of God has recently done a CD. Let's Have Church. We want you to get that CD. If you are looking for a stocking stuffer, you can buy that online. Many of you see it on iTunes. But for those of you who are old school, get a CD. We have some in the office called. Sister Melissa has a great book, The Power of Prayer. You can purchase. Listen, you can get that, Unlock the Power of Prayer, and you can get that. And that's another, not only stocking stuffer, but a soul stuffer that they can have. And I believe they'll be blessed by it. I've written 2 books, The Power of One and Fight the Battles Within. You can purchase those here as well. You can get them here from the state office, or you can go online to get them. We would be more than happy to get those to you. And then as well, there's been a wonderful book that has been written this past year, Skin Deep, about our church, the Church of God, and what the Lord has done as it relates to people of color within our church. And we want you to pick that up. You can call the office, and this is another great, great resource. Listen, we do apologize. I want to say this before I get into my guest. But we do apologize. We just had a few little technical difficulties as it relates to our 2022 calendar. We are working very hard to get a up-to-date calendar. Please be patient with me. As you know, because of COVID, we've had to change, we've had to adjust. And as such, we're still making a few adjustments to the 22 calendar. But I want you to be aware that as of right now, all of our state events will be at the Rosen Center, from the prayer conference, women's conference, state convention, as well as the youth convention next year. We will hopefully have those links out very, very soon. But 2022 is also a year of the General Assembly. And I'm asking you to be preparing ministers, to be preparing to be a part of the great General Assembly in San Antonio, Texas. I'm a part of the planning committee. I can tell you that I was just there as well last week. And San Antonio is preparing for us to be there. And the bishop's preparing for us to be there. The Church of God is preparing for us to be there. And I want you to start preparing for you to be there. I think it's the 25th to the 29th of July. And we want you to be a part of that great, great meeting. Listen, we are on the internet right now. And one of the things that I would have never thought would ever happen is that you would be meeting people. Well, you just be introduced to people that you've never met through this wonderful medium. And today, my guest is somebody I met through Twitter. I don't know if any of you have Twitter accounts. I don't know if many of you follow Twitter. But this gentleman, I just see random posts by him. And I just reached out to him and said, man, I do this thing called Teaching Tuesday. And I would love for you to be a part of what we're doing. And so today it is my privilege and honor to introduce you guys Brother Andrew Fouts, founder and director of Ministry Misfits. That's what it's called, Ministry Misfits. And man, how you doing, Doc? Tell me something good.
I'm doing good. How's it going?
All right, good. Now, listen, I need a T-shirt. I'm going to tell you, like, I'm going to get a T-shirt. I like that. I like that.
We're hoping to be able to start selling them here soon. We haven't been able to yet, but we're hoping to.
Well, that's all right, man. Listen, you don't know me, I don't know you, so let's get to know one another. My name is Anthony Pelt. I'm part of the Church of God, Cleveland, Tennessee. I do this thing every Tuesday called Teaching Tuesday. And again, I started following you on Twitter, so that's kind of how I kind of came up. But who is Andrew Fouts and what is Ministry Misfits?
Yeah, so I'm Andrew Fouts. In addition to Ministry Misfits, I'm also the director of digital resources for a international sports ministry called CSRM. We do sports ministry consulting, training, equipping, resourcing, networking all across the world for sports rec and fitness ministers within the local church. And I develop all their digital resources, such as podcasts like Ministry Misfits, which is where that kind of came out of. It's a sister branch of our resources there. In addition to that, I'm here in Canton, Ohio. My wife, Micah, and I have been married for 7 years now. We've got a 3-year-old girl, a almost 4-month-old boy, and then a middle child that we lost in 2019, unfortunately. So, but we're here in Canton. I'm doing the CSRM stuff, doing the digital stuff with the Misfits as well, and we're just here. We are.
It's so funny. It was so funny that when I think I hit you, you were doing a little side gig for the Hall of Fame game,
I make my money because ministry doesn't pay me anything. I make my money by driving Uber and Lyft, and then I also deliver for 2 different companies. But with the Hall of Fame weekend, I was averaging about $45 an hour because everybody in the world was in town for the game for a week. So yeah, that week was pretty good.
Now I'm gonna tell you something. I'm gonna come back to swing back to it because you've hit something that I do believe is a critical conversation that we must have in this time. So I'll hit you with that. Let me ask you this: when you started into this realm, did you go to school for this? How did you kind of come to this skill set that you have now?
Yeah, so I went to school for baseball, actually, is why I went to school. And then freshman year, I blew out my knee as a catcher, had reconstructive surgery. And then my junior year was diagnosed with epilepsy, and that put me on the permanent DL. While I was at school, though, is where I was introduced to Dr. Greg Linville. I had been called into ministry at 13, ignored the call until I was 18 when I finally said okay. Went to, was applying to schools for baseball mostly because that was the only way I was getting in. When I got accepted here at Malone, I met Dr. Linville, and he's the one that showed me sports ministry, and that's when I latched onto it. The digital stuff just kind of came about out of that. I've been a senior pastor, I've been a church planner, I've been a church revitalizer. I've taught in the schools. I have coached in the schools, done youth ministry, outreach ministry, a bunch of different offices within the church, and within education as well. But, the digital side of the ministry was one where I just kind of, it was one of those things where God just leads you into it. When growing up in church, I was always the sound guy. I was always in charge of setting up. My best friend's dad was the music minister for a long time, and so he taught us how to do all of it. And then from there, my dad was a videographer, and so he had his own videography company, and so he taught me how to do all of that side of it as well. And then Twitter and social media just kind of happened by chance. I was asked by actually my parents' senior pastor was tired of trying to get a hold of me before I had texting. And so he's like, get a Twitter so I can actually just send you this stuff. I started following a bunch of bands because and a couple of them I actually did know personally. And so they were following me. And then people suddenly thought that I must have been some big influencer. People started sending me stuff and following me. And then I very quickly learned through that, though, how to kind of manipulate the algorithms and things like that. And then, while I was in college doing, training in ministry, I started recognizing how the church should be utilizing all of this. And so that's when I kind of started being almost a digital ministry evangelist in a way, in terms of trying to take this to the church. Unfortunately, most churches ignored it until COVID forced them into it. But it's just something that, God's been slowly dragging me along where I was supposed to be walking the whole time.
Wow. That's good stuff. So let me ask this question. You just hit on something, and I think this is a great place to start. I'm a bishop, as they say, of a bunch of churches. But you've shared that you have been a pastor, planter, revitalizer. As you've been able to look at the landscape of the land, what have you been hearing or been receiving as been the number one thing that the church should have learned through this COVID? And maybe what should be the number one thing even laity and leadership together must learn through this season that we just come out of? We're still in it to some degree.
Yeah, so a good thing that I think churches should have learned, and that the majority I think have, even though some are showing they haven't, would be in relation to this digital ministry stuff. They finally have recognized that it can actually do good, like what we're doing right here.
Right.
And so a lot of churches are finally taking care of an online congregation of people that, are too scared for whatever reason right now to be able to enter their doors, whether it's a physical thing or a spiritual thing or a mental, emotional thing. They're able to, when we were in Cleveland for a while, I actually had more people that referred to me as their pastor that I had never physically met, but that were following our services, following the Bible study stuff that we were doing online. And so they considered themselves a part of our church, even though they had never walked through the doors, and we were having interaction, things like that. So, it's something that has been around for a while. It's just not been utilized well. And now churches are starting to utilize it, which is good. But, the other side of that question, as far as stuff that I've been noticing, if nothing else, is empathy has been the big word that I keep coming back to. And most of it is because, unfortunately, we are not seeing much of it. 2020 in general, whether it's the COVID stuff or the racial stuff, both sides, the lack of empathy coming out of the church here in the U.S. has been astoundingly sad. Even, one of the things, I think this may actually be where when you started following me, because I was trying to look back last night and could not figure out where we finally connected at. Was on Palm Sunday this year on Twitter, Christianity was trending, which you would think is a good thing because Christians are celebrating they're celebrating. We're about to go into Resurrection Week, this huge celebration of, hey, we're worshiping and we're worshiping online. But the reality was, when you open that up, it was not trending because Christians were tagging Christianity. It was blowing up because there were people on there just fed up completely with Christianity because of the things that they were seeing from the reactions from pastors, whether it was due to COVID, whether it was due to the racial stuff, whether it was the political stuff going on, whether Washington or up in Canada even, and then also the reaction of Christians towards Lil Nas X shoes.
That's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, all of that stuff was the reason why Christianity was trending on Palm Sunday on Twitter. It had nothing to do with the fact that we were celebrating the Messiah entering Jerusalem, about to sacrifice himself, and it had all to do with people just fed up with the way that Christians are acting, and not in a persecution way, in a just people aren't seeing what they should be seeing. And that empathy factor of if we would actually take a moment to actually get out of our, stop looking at things from a singular worldview of this is the way we look at the world, and start looking at it, we know that the Bible is telling us this and this is the way things are, but those outside of our walls don't know that, and so we need to start looking at what they're looking at and start understanding why they are the way they are, rather than just going off on whether it's Twitter, Facebook, wherever, whether it's from the pulpit, unfortunately in some cases, going off and talking about stuff we don't actually know what we're talking about. And so that empathy thing has been the big one. You know, that's been kind of where I've seen a lot, or a lack of, over the past year or so, and even before that, but it's really exaggerated in 2020, 2021.
That's good stuff. And I think one of the great challenges is that you said something, we didn't really know what we're talking about, but I don't think we even cared about what we were talking about at a certain point. We just want to be talking about something.
Right.
And to see that it was trending not because of Messiah, but because of foolishness. And again, I think part of the thing that struck me to your ministry was that you kind of made me think about it. I was like, wait a minute. I don't want to be known for that when this week we should be known for this.
Right.
Let me ask this question as well. As you probably get your information, do you get more from ministers or members? Are you able to kind of analyze who's interfacing with you? Are you getting stuff from what I call preachers, or are you getting more from parishioners? See,
that's where the funny side of this all comes in, because I think you and I had actually talked about it on Twitter. I started a new Twitter account when we launched Misfits. My personal one is still up, but I never use it because Twitter had been dying for a long time. Facebook had overtaken it. Instagram is starting to overtake Facebook. All that kind of stuff. But Twitter is kind of starting to come back, specifically within more of a professional field. A lot of professors, authors, other, media content creators, news agencies, things like that are starting to come back. And so I realized very quickly that I needed to be back on there, but it needed to be in a different format than the way it had been before. So I was building a base from scratch. And so what I started doing was I just started inputting myself into people's conversations, and eventually they just stopped realizing that I was never invited and assumed I had been there the whole time. I'm in conversations with a lot of different people. So, it's a lot of professional ministers, people that are in professional ministry, more of the ministers to ministers. A lot of the people that I actually try to interact with. We've got a couple of other Christian podcasters is the other one, because this accounts for the podcast. And so the Christian Podcasters Association that I'm a member of, there's a small group of us that kind of interact back and forth and try to boost each other's posts up a little bit. I also am one of those annoying people that comment all the time on the podcast networks, stuff. I am not above shameless advertising. Giant t-shirt. I was gonna wear the one that the small logo that's not obnoxious, but I think it's in the dryer still. But we that kind of stuff. So I've been known to just kind of show up in conversations, and I'm like that guy where everybody's like, "Who is this guy?" And they're like, "Oh yeah, he's just here." It's like he showed up one day, and we can't ask. We feel bad because we couldn't remember his name, and nobody wants to ask him to leave. So now he's just here.
You don't have a whole conversation like, who is it? I don't know. He just been around. Let me ask this question. This is something that you just brought up as you were getting in. You have morphed from pastor, planter, different things, and you were sharing. Like I said, I think the first time we had any, I'd say, real contact was the weekend I was bugging you about, hey, being on, and you say I can't do it this time. I'm doing the Uber thing. I want you to kind of walk me through something because I think old cats like me in this new day are really maybe not aware. And as a matter of fact, I'll even tag this to the last one. You just said something in the beginning in what you just said that I never thought about. Who is using the internet and where they're using it from? And then as far as ministers in their livelihood, maybe you can kind of tell me what we're seeing as well as this shift in and I believe you're a professional minister, but the gig economy and how it affects what they do. Because you just said something. I'm on Facebook. I think we're doing a Facebook Live. This is Brother Andrew Fouts. He's with Ministry Misfit. Some of you are on Facebook. Some of you are on YouTube. But you may need to educate me as to, if I want to make an impact with the internet, where should I be and who should I be hitting if I go to those areas?
Yeah, so that area, that whole thing really is going to be based off of who you're trying to actually reach. The terms that we use this within the Misfits, but it really comes out of the CSRM model of doing things. The way we identify success is through this fourfold rubric of: is it strategic? Is it relevant? Is it efficient? Is it effective? And so really what you're talking about here is the strategic relevance side of it, is knowing who it is you're trying to actually reach out to and then finding where they are. So Facebook used to be much more of a millennial Gen X domain. It has slowly shifted more where now more of the baby boomer generation is the one that is kind of on there, largely due to the fact they're wanting to keep in touch with their grandkids and everything else. So the millennials are still on there, but not for the same reasons that they were before. We mostly go on there because, memes are a stress reliever. Those sort of things. Instagram has taken off, which it's actually owned by Facebook, but nobody seems to ever recognize that until Facebook crashes. Instagram is where most of the millennials will be there, and Gen Z is on there as well because of the fact that it's instant gratification. This is where we get into some more of the theological, philosophical stuff. Instagram took off because now everybody is immediately able to identify, to give you validation for the images you are posting. So it's a lot more of about the appearance. That's part of why you have actual Instagram models that are just, all that kind of stuff. That's where you're going to find that. Twitter has become much more of a kind of a professional arena for professionals to be able to just talk and not have to talk shop, but they can if they want. You're going to find guys that are, constantly talking about very serious stuff that when college football turns on, suddenly you feel like you're talking to a guy at a frat house. That sort of thing on there. These sort of social networks, you can very easily identify who's on where based off of what kind of content is coming out of it. That's part of the reason why you can actually track when the suicide rate for teens started to massively increase more than it had in the past, based off of when Facebook and Instagram allowed 13-year-olds access.
Wow.
At that point, the bullying from school now is coming home. So these sort of things are things that are very easy to track if you actually look into it. And once you start looking into it, then you're able to actually identify, okay, who's where, how can I reach this? If this is my target group, then I need to be here. YouTube is its own beast. It's basically a search engine, not a video platform. It's not a social media platform. It's an extension of Google. People are using it as a search engine, and so that's a whole nother topic to go down. But those sort of things are what we typically look at. And whenever I've done any kind of consults for digital ministry stuff, that's where we start. If we can identify who your target group is, then we find the strategic relevant place to be. And then from there, we start to break down, okay, this is what kind of content goes out on this. This is what kind of content goes out on this. This is the stuff to stay away from. This is how you use hashtags, all that kind of stuff. So it's an ever growing and expanding field because they're always changing algorithms. But it's one that if you at least have a general knowledge of it, you should be able to be at least somewhat successful with it.
That's good stuff. Listen, this again, this is a product of a, I don't know, I'm old school, so I say internet contact. I met this young man through Twitter. He's never physically, this is the first time we've ever seen each other, so I think we talked on the phone once. But I was just intrigued, and I hope for those of you who are part of the Florida Cocoa family, and those of you who are part of my friendship in my little world, I'm trying to not be that old man saying, get off my lawn. This is here. It don't appear to be going anywhere. And there's a world that does need to be reached. There's a world that wants to be reached. And I just remind people that we as Christians have the only message that can not only reach them, but redeem them. And I hope that we would redeem this media, whether it be, if he said Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. Hopefully, God, you'll redeem it so that people can be reached and won to the Lord. When you said something, I said, man, I resemble that word, Mark, to keep up with their grandchildren. I'm on Facebook, and I post all my grandson's pictures on it, and people who know me say, Bishop, you got your, but all the people that always see it are old people. There are no young people who say that. There's always older people like me. And my daughter, my last child, who was 21, I don't think she has a Facebook. They were mad with me when I got on Instagram. They said, no, Dad, you can't be on Instagram. You're gonna mess it all up.
You have like 6 accounts. When I tried to tag you last night, I was looking through. I was like, I don't know which one is actually him.
Here's the weird deal. Somebody clones me every other week. I'm gonna go, I'm not that important. I'm not that big. So I don't even listen. And here's the problem. I'm too old to even know how to get them on. So you got to give me a tutorial so I can clean off all those crazy ones. So I have no idea who those people are. I have no idea. Let me ask this question, because now the other thing that you said earlier, and you are engaged in the gig economy. A lot of my people don't understand that. But you were driving Uber during that Hall of Fame weekend. Can you talk to why ministries and ministers need not be afraid of the gig economy? And maybe even give some suggestions. Say, Pastor, if you are interested in something, here might be something you might be interested in. Or laity, just anybody.
Yeah, so, it's kind of weird. The whole gig economy thing, so again, off of the internet, somebody had posted the fact that growing up, we were always told not to talk to strangers, not to get into strangers' cars, and not to talk to anybody we don't know on the internet. And now we are ordering, and not only ordering, we're paying for strangers to come for us to get in their cars that we just interacted with on the internet.
Yeah.
That whole thing. The gig economy, the way it works is one that it's no different than any other business, because we're private contractors. I don't work for Uber, I don't work for Lyft, I don't work for Freight, I don't work for Roadie. I work for myself. And so that's the area that's very nice, is that because I work for myself, I set my own schedule. And so because I set my own schedule, I'm able to find time to do the ministry stuff. The hard thing with that, though, is that because of the fact that I work my own schedule and I rely on, I'm a contractor, I rely on other people, the amount of money that comes in may differ day to day. I luckily have somewhat, because I'm on multiple platforms, I know how to work out where I'm able to make a consistent amount, every day. There are some weeks that are better than others, but for them, Hall of Fame week is not a normal week. It was a very nice week, but it was not a normal week. That kind of stuff. And so that the nice thing for people in ministry that are needing extra money is that you have the freedom to do so without it impacting the other stuff too much. It does impact because there are times where I have a hard time being able to get everything done and still have family time. That side of it. It also unfortunately means that like my wife has to work her job still for the insurance side of it. All of that stuff. The bigger thing that I think the gig economy really should show for churches, not necessarily, I'm going to talk to the churches, not the pastors. And since I'm currently not in a church, it's not going to sound as self-serving here. Take care of your pastors financially. Take care of them. They don't just show up Sunday after you've locked them in their office all weekend or all week. It's very we're on call 24/7. Even when we're no longer on staff at a church, we're still on call 24/7.
Wow, that's good stuff. Let me repeat that. That's a powerful point. They're still on call even if they're not on staff, and I think many times people don't see that. They do see us as only 1 hour wonders. In our tribe is Pentecostal, and we're Black Pentecostal, so good church ain't 1 hour. So so good church for Black Pentecostal is got to be at least 2.5 hours, and you got to be sweaty. So, folks, we still more than 2 hour wonder. I don't want to close.
Yeah, it's very difficult to try to navigate being able to spend the amount of time that's needed that the congregation deserves and that your calling deserves when you're still having to work 30 or 40 hours a week on the other side of it. That's something that unfortunately I don't know why it happened or where it happened. A lot of it is, I've actually been told by some people that they believe it's biblical to not pay their pastors, which I normally just laugh and then direct them to 1 Corinthians 9. But the idea of the pastor as an employee of the church is, it's a weird, the word we use within CSRM is paradigm. They're employees of the church as far as the government is concerned, so you should be paying them. You should be taking care of your pastor there. But on the flip side of that, they're not employees of the church where you pay them so you get to decide what he does.
Right.
And that's kind of where the Ministry Misfits stuff has kind of come from, is this weird paradigm in the American church of pastors are expected to look, act, and preach and talk a specific way. But then if God is telling them to go another direction, normally they're cut off pretty quickly.
Wow.
And, so the goal of what we're trying to do within the Misfits is address these things from a theological standpoint to be able to say the stuff that the pastors can't with, because they have to take care of their family, and so they cannot lose that job.
Will you kind of even say that again? Because I think people don't even understand the pressure that pastors are under. I think this month is still Minister Appreciation Month, and I think many people don't ponder what you just said, that pastors are under pressure because churches are treating them like employees. As opposed to men or women of God. And as a result of that, they are hindered from doing the gospel because it's their livelihood, or they got some crazy group of people in the church who say, listen, we're your human resource department, and this is your policies and procedures, but what the Bible says, if you do X, Y, Z, we're gonna get rid of you.
Right. And it's it's a dangerous road to go down, because I think, a lot of it, we actually, my co-host Brandon and I talked about this on a couple of different episodes before we actually started on the one where we were talking digital ministry. We're back at Twitter again. Within digital ministry, the history of digital ministry really starts with the rise of the tele-evangelist. And what we saw historically with the tele-evangelist is no theology, heavy pocketbooks, a demand for more money, and then scandal that ends their career. And so that has played a large part into it, I'm sure, as far as why the idea of how much should we pay this guy? How, isn't God supposed to provide him with everything he needs? God's going to provide somebody within God's will everything he needs to fulfill God's will. But the church is able to take some of the stress off.
Right.
And that those sort of things are those dynamics, those paradigms are those things that are very hard to navigate. And we've gotten so far into, again, that lack of empathy within our congregations that we don't recognize how much stress the pastor's under. I don't remember where it's at. I know it is an actual poll. I'm not making up the stat, but so you can fact check it, you'll find it, and then you can let me know where it's at. The top 3 occupations that have major marital strife and PTSD associated marital strife is military, obviously, law enforcement, obviously, and the third one is clergy. But nobody wants to recognize that, because we can't have our pastors in that kind of light. We've got to keep them up in their glass box and all these things, but we don't recognize the fact that while they've been preparing this message, they also had 6 phone calls about members dying, about, something going on at their kid's school, about something going on with an elderly parent or grandparent. They're watching all these different things going on. They've got their hands in a lot of different areas out of necessity, not out of greed. And it takes a toll, especially if you add on the fact that now they're also having to go out and work another job on top of doing all of this. There is no such thing as part-time ministry. It's all full-time.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, and that's the stuff that we don't talk about enough outside of when we're talking shop. And a lot of it is because of the fact that if we say one wrong thing, then immediately we've lost our job. And in some cases, especially the way it is right now, in the how political everything is, losing your job may also mean losing your career, because now you've been blackballed.
Wow. See, I never thought about that. I mean, that's the ramifications that we are now living in. That's good stuff. Wow.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it good stuff. I would say it's just unfortunate reality.
The bad stuff is good stuff you bring it to you. Let me ask this to you, because this now this a little rabbit that's kind of ran through my brain. Then something Ministry Memphis that I think you guys made a statement. How can one become concrete in their calling in the midst of this cancel culture? Then how would you encourage a minister to understand that? I believe first off, Scripture's saying this to some degree. Yeah. But they must be prepared to be committed to their calling, even in the midst of this cancel culture.
Right, and that's where the unfortunate side is more of American culture beyond cancel culture, because American culture has made pastoral ministry a different type of career than a biblical pastoral ministry.
Wow.
We look at them as they're locked in the church until Sunday morning. We let them out for, an hour or 2 hours. Then we put them back in their box and they go, they sleep until Sunday. But instead now it's the pastor is expected to be, as far as what we see laid out in Acts and in Corinthians and everything else, the pastor is expected to be the elder, the shepherd, the deacon, the janitor, the list goes on and on and on and on. They're the ones the pastor is the one that is supposed to be going out and making all the hospital visits. The pastor is the one that's supposed to be scheduling the outreach activities. The pastor is the one that's supposed to be, volunteering in the nursery every other, once a month. The pastor is supposed to still be up on the pulpit, even though he's volunteering in the nursery once a month. The pastor, all these different things. But what we see in Scripture is the reality is that God has already shown us that we're supposed to be dividing all of these things up among people within the congregation based off the gifts that they have. But we can't do that with the American church traditional model unless we have a huge budget and then we have a huge staff. And then all of a sudden, then it's expected. But we don't do that enough within, especially the smaller churches with smaller budgets where the pastor is a one-man army that's expected to do all of it. As far as how you actually go through this, as far as fulfilling the calling in the midst of all of it, 2 Timothy 4 is where I always go. In chapter 3, Paul is, he's writing this letter to Timothy. He's in prison again, expecting that he's probably not actually going to make it out this time. And so he's kind of writing his farewell to his son in the faith. And in chapter 3, he tells Timothy, look, you know exactly what to do. You've been taught the scriptures. You've been taught the stories of the people that came before you, like your mother and your grandmother. You know what to do. You know how to use the scripture. And I'm going to remind you anyway that this is how you use it. And then immediately in chapter 4, he says, so I'm going to charge you to go and do exactly what Paul did to get himself thrown in prison. But he tells Timothy to go and do it. And in the last section, he says preach the message, whether it's convenient or not, to be consistent in it. And then the last thing he says is to do the work of an evangelist and fulfill your ministry. Because it doesn't matter what the external things look like. Your job is to fulfill your ministry. That ministry that, the word we use is holy discontent. This thing that God has put in your heart that if you do not do it, you're going to explode. To fulfill your ministry is what we are called to do. We're called to go out and make disciples. How do we make disciples? We make disciples by fulfilling the ministry that God has called us to do, whether that's sports, rec, and fitness like we do within CSRM, whether that is in multicultural outreach ministry, whether that, the stuff that we talk more about on the Misfits, all of that kind of stuff, whatever that looks like that God has directed you to do, fulfilling your ministry is the call that God has placed on us. That's the charge that Paul relates to Timothy. That is the call of the Christian, is to fulfill our ministry by going and making disciples of all nations and baptizing them. And it's not an easy thing. And especially in today's cancel culture or American, whatever you want to call it, it's become an even harder task to do, but it's still necessary to do.
That's good stuff. One of the things is, as I heard you, even listeners that you sharing that, as a little kid, I used to always hear we'd be in days like this, and man, I'm in days like this going, man, they were telling the truth. I never really thought about this. The great challenge as well, how do we get laity then? Because now we had a call to the pastor. But how do we get laity to look at this thing a little differently, so that they understand that they are essential to the work of the ministry as well?
Yeah, that we use the term evangelistic disciple making is the term that we use. So I'm just going to throw that out because it's going to come up here. This actually is what the meeting that I was in right before this, the Tuesday talk, that it's another podcast that I produced through CSRM. We were just talking about evangelistic disciple making in that talk this month. But it starts with the leadership within the church as far as what their goal actually is. Is our goal to just get a bunch of people to raise their hands? We call it Dave's decision. Or is it to get dedicated disciples? Is the reverse double D that we use? Is it, Dave's decision versus dedicated disciples? We are saying dedicated disciples is the route we need to be going. We should be not just expecting them to raise their hand, but then investing into them and watching them grow. We talked about through the 5 B's of, belong, believe, baptize, behave, become. Once somebody feels like they belong, the Spirit starts working on them and hearing the message. They start to believe. They're baptized by the Spirit. Then their behavior starts to change, and then they become disciple makers themselves. And so this process, though, has to start up in leadership, as far as saying our goal is not to fill our pews. Our goal is to build or to disciple making disciples. So we are not just about, okay, we've got a huge building, now we have all the pews filled, and now we have this huge offering coming in, and so now we can finance other ministries. Instead, it's about, we are going to find people that want to be invested in and that want to invest in others. We also refer to as our Timothy relationships. Paul has Timothy, but then Timothy went and found other people underneath him as well, and then those people went and found those people. We have an Andrew list of people that we are trying to work on. Andrew went and found his brother and brought him to Jesus. There's a bunch of different little words and names that we use within the language of CSRM, but all of it is wrapped around a church culture that is much more focused about building disciples than it is about just filling the pews. And when the church is a church that is built upon disciple making, ministry is a natural byproduct of that. Because now all of a sudden, the Sunday school class over here and the Sunday school class over here aren't two separate Sunday school classes. Now they're Sunday school classes a part of the same mission.
Wow.
That they may be reaching singles, they may be reaching married people, but both of those groups are all a part of the same body. And that body is going out and reaching the community and making more disciples within their communities and planting churches and starting the process all over. And so it's much more about starting out at the top, of changing our idea of what actually success looks like in ministry. And once we take the numbers out and start looking at our spiritual descendants, is the phrase that Greg Linville always uses. What our spiritual descendants look like and what the community will look like when we start developing family discipleship within our communities. That's when we can start to see real change happen. Dwight Mcdowell, who's the chairman of our board, he also has his own podcast called The Mentor. He and I did a co-episode it's been a couple months now. But he shared his story of the fact that he went from being in the worst neighborhood in Virginia Beach. Within 4 years, the gang violence was starting to decline. The drugs were starting to decline. Parents were coming to these practices. All he was doing was running a sports league. But by year 7, the community went from being the one that everybody avoided to the one that everyone wanted to be a part of. Not because of Dwight, but because of the fact that Dwight was investing the love of God into the community and finding other people that wanted that love to be invested in them. And then they went out and found more people, and the community was changed in a 7-year period because of the fact that discipleship was happening. Not just somebody on a street corner yelling out, repent or perish. Oh, good, we can check your name off the card. And unfortunately, that's been the cultural side of the United States within the church, is that it's been expected that you are part of a church, and it's been expected that you are this, and expected. It's not that way anymore. And it should not have ever been that way, because all that did was allow us to leave the evangelistic disciple making just to focus on evangelism with no growth. And we need to have both.
Yeah. It's so funny you said it again. We live for the check, and we make the check the conversion. We've got to check the conversion. Let's keep moving. You brought up something, and I want you to definitely take some time to talk about it. The CSRM, and I know many people, go back and forth, but this is a great model for those who want to see what I believe is community change. Kind of talk to that and how sports ministry can be used from a church model to be evangelistic and discipleship making?
Right. So CSRM is the Association of Church Sports and Recreation Ministers, or ministries. I can't remember which, and we can't really decide. We deal with both. Uh, what we are as an organization is a parachurch ministry. We come alongside the local church, both domestically and internationally. We provide consultation, training. We have a program where you can get your degree. We've got the resources both in print through our publishing house, as well as digital production of audio and video, podcasts and videos, and training seminars, things like that. Internationally, we have people all over the world that are doing these trainings. I believe we've got staff on every continent except for Antarctica. I can never remember if we still have somebody in Australia or not, but we're all over the place trying to reach the local church so that the local church can reach their community. The stuff that we do is all based out of a 3-tier paradigm, which you hear a lot about on Ministry Misfits, because that's the model we use as well, of a base model of theological truths. So these are the Christocentric theological truths that cannot be taken away. This is what we build everything off of. After that, we move up a level to our philosophical principles, and these are all biblically based philosophies as far as the way that we're thinking about the theology. And then after we've thought about it, then we move on to our methodological models of actually doing what we were just talking or just thinking through. And so that's the way we approach all of our different stuff. So, we take within Ministry Misfits, we take specific things like, the one we released this morning was actually on discipleship and disciple making. And so we actually broke it down into, okay, we're saying that disciple making looks like intergenerational ministry. It looks like being intentional with people. It looks like, wow, I was up late editing, so I can't remember what the other steps were. But part of what we're doing with that is we're not just saying this is what you do, but then we're providing this is the biblical basis for why we say this. One that we cover a lot because it's very relevant and because I'm a part of a lot of multi-ethnic ministry is we cover the Imago Dei a lot. So we straight up say, the theology of the Imago Dei is this, that all men are created in God's image. And so if we believe that, then this is how we apply it. How do we know we're made in God's image? Genesis 1, Genesis 2, John 1, all these different areas that we're able to then fall back on saying, we are not the ones saying this. God is saying this, and this is how we know this. And so if God is telling us to do this, then we need to be thinking in this way. And if we're thinking in this way, then this is how we act. So that's what CSRM does. We do networking through things like the Tuesday Talk. Resource production is what I do right now. Relationship building is part of what I'm moving into. We're kind of in a transition right now. But a lot of what we do is we want to come along and train up leaders to be able to do this in their communities themselves. So, sports rec and fitness is a huge awesome way to be able to break down the disconnect of how do I get them out of the street into my church. And if you do it, and if you follow the evangelistic disciple making model, then you also bridge that second disconnect of, okay, now they're in my gym. How do I get them into my sanctuary? And so we walk you through the steps to do that through the evangelistic disciple making model. But, sports has a way of uniting people. That's another area, you go on Saturday afternoon on Twitter, you will know exactly where everybody stands. And there are clear dividing lines among friends even. And then people that normally are enemies are on each other's sides because you guys are wearing the same school hat. It's a unifier. Scripture uses sports imagery all throughout, and so it's a very easy method of being able to start showing people the scriptures as well. Fitness has taken off like a mad storm, especially among women. And so churches that are, able to reach the women in their community and congregation through fitness classes. The church that I currently attend here in Canton was started out of a basketball league. they started with the Martin Leagues for basketball and the community center with the Martin Center. And then, after a year or so, they realized, it's not just a group of guys coming to play basketball, a group of kids coming to get off the streets, but we have a large family here. And so one of their mentors finally told us, like, you realize you have a church, right? Just plan it already. So that stuff, the stuff like I talked about with Dwight McDowell, sports was the key to his entire community coming together, to the point where community improved. And then the community also was much more open to hearing the gospel through partnerships that were developing among other pastors in the area through that league. The first episodes that we released was with our Africa director, Bradley Barnes, who was a non-white that grew up in apartheid South Africa in the midst of all of it. And, he was the first non-white student to be allowed in the segregated schools there, simply because he was a soccer superstar.
Wow.
But then that allowed him to develop relationships to the point where now he uses soccer to reach pretty much the entire continent. Now that he's our director for the African continent, he's able to reach people with the gospel that otherwise would be closed off to it. There's a lot of different benefits of it. With recreation stuff, we've got things like camping ministries. There's a church in Columbus, Ohio that just put in a disc golf course. And so they have a disc golf course for their community. We've seen churches doing airsoft leagues, paintball leagues. Video games actually are a huge one right now. Esports are growing, and so churches that can jump on it and get in at the ground level and provide safe spots for their youth to be able to still play online, but in community that's going to actually be beneficial and not tear each other down, is huge. Fantasy football even is another big one, where it doesn't cost you anything to do, but you can get a bunch of people together and just have some friendly competition there. There's a lot of different ways to do it. And it goes back to what we said, even with the digital ministry, of what is strategically relevant for your church? How does it fit the mission vision of your church? How does it fit the mission vision of your community as far as your community outreach? And are you planning on doing this to just have a place for your congregation to come together, which is not a problem. That's a good thing for fellowship. But even more so, are you going to be able to maximize this to be able to reach the lost in your community with the gospel? So there's a lot of different ways to do it, a lot of different steps involved, but it's definitely one that, for the most part, can be done in any church setting if your mission and vision is one that is going to be reaching people where that is where they're already at. People are already taking their kids Sunday morning to soccer practice. So if you can provide a cheaper league that has quality coaching and a lot of times better competition, but without them having to spend their entire weekend out at the field, you're going to start seeing people that normally would not pay attention to you showing up and signing up. One of the other things that kind of is a little bit different with the stuff we preach is that we are not against competition whatsoever, and in fact encourage it. But we encourage it from a biblical model and a biblical standpoint. We're not out there. I actually wrote a series of blogs on the theology behind the Astros in 2017. That was a huge blow up scandal, but it's not something that we should have really been that surprised about, because we see it in sports all the time, and the culture of sports has led to it. So how do we within the church react when, to the Astros cheating scandal, to Belichick's scandals, to all of these other things? How do we react in those situations? There's a biblical framework for it. We just have to be willing to look for it. And so that's part of what CSRM's goal is to come along and help churches be able to find that biblical model and biblical framework and fit it in with the mission and vision of their church.
Man, that is good stuff. It's amazing to me now. We're almost out of time. I cannot believe I'm almost, we got a few seconds here relative to our time, but man, you're incredible. And I hope that we'll get a chance to see each other face to face. I'm going to have to bring you to Florida. When I do some of my meetings, man, we have to bring you to Florida.
As long as you do it when it's 8 inches of snow and ice up here, I'm more than happy to go to Florida.
We'll definitely do that, man. We'll have you bring the babies down and love on you real good. Listen, if my team or anybody would like to get hold to you outside of even this, again, hit us with your email and all. I mean, however you want them to contact you, how would they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so if you're looking to get a hold of us through Ministry Misfits, the easiest way is to go to bio.link/Ministry Misfits. That brings up a huge list of all of our channels. It has a link to contact us through email. It has a link to sign up for our mailing list. It also has a link to the website, which every once in a while I remember we have and I have to update. Yeah, it's not been going good. So that's how you can contact us there. We're also on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Ministry Misfit. No S because Ministry Misfits was already taken, and I'm a little bitter. You can get a hold of us by email. It's ministrymisfitmedia@gmail.com. You can also find that through the bio link. If you're wanting to talk CSRM stuff, you can get a hold of me at csrmdigital@gmail.com. That's where you can get a hold of us for all the CSRM stuff. You can also go to csrm.org is our website. It's been recently updated, which is part of why the Ministry Misfits one has not been. The website, when we tried to update it, was down for 24 days because I didn't realize there were new federal regulations about changing. But it's back up now, so go see it. Our office administrator, Kat, did an excellent job getting it updated. And so you can find out more about what we're doing there as well as get connected. If you want to look for resources through csrm.org, if you click on, I believe it's Resource Library or Digital Library, it will take you there. But you can also go to overwhelmingvictory.org. That's our resource branch. Overwhelming Victory Press is our book publisher. Overwhelming Victory Flicks is our video publisher. And then Overwhelming Victory Radio that I oversee is our audio programming. Also, you can listen to all of the different programs we offer straight from the website, including Ministry Misfits. And you also would be able to get a hold of the other ministries through that as well.
Well, man, listen, it has been incredible, the stuff you've shared today. I want to just say to those who may be watching again, and the reason this conversation came up is because he's on Twitter. I want to encourage many of you to understand that, I'm that old guy, so I probably would have, hopefully come across him on Facebook. But the truth of the matter is there's a world that is on the internet. You're watching me today. Some of you will come back and watch me, whether it be through Facebook or YouTube. But I want to just encourage as we close out to share a couple of things he said today was, first off, to every pastor who's out there being faithful to the call, thank you. We realize it's been difficult. It's been really challenging during this season, but don't give up the fight. God is still redeeming people. People are still being won. And so don't let it get down. I think the other thing he said, and I know people don't like to hear this too much, but we must get back to biblical Christianity. Let's not let another adjective get in front of it. And in the face of American Christianity and cancer culture, there is a conquering Christ. And I just want to encourage you, keep lifting Jesus up. I struggled. And there are days through this time that there were situations and circumstances and conversations that were really difficult. But I do believe, and I will always believe that Christ is the answer. He's soon to come again, and we're just getting people ready for that great day. I think another thing that I also want to challenge you is you can still win your community. And he says something, use sports in our context. And I want to say something again that means, people of color, we have always used sports as a means to reach our community. We're in football season here in the South. It is a big deal. We'll be in basketball season. It's a big deal. Baseball is a big deal. The World Series. These are what I call low-hanging fruit opportunities for us to reach the world. Don't be afraid. This weekend, we don't celebrate Halloween, but I'm asking everybody. Listen, people are going to be knocking on your door for some candy. Give them some Jesus, too. Man, that's an easy one. You're going to knock on my door. Give them some Jesus on top of that.
Let me throw one other thing out there from the outreach guys' perspective here. If you're going to be doing a trunk or treat, or even if you're just in your home giving out the candy, make sure you fill up their bag. Don't just give them one piece of candy and then a track. Actually fill up their bag. that was one thing that drove me nuts with like one of the churches we were at was, we had a decent turnout, but I was the only one giving out handfuls of candy. And so like some of them were coming, I was the last one, their bag looked like it hadn't even been, touched yet. So give them the candy. Yeah.
Listen, folks, don't be cheating on the candy, man. Listen, listen, my mom let me watch me. My mom let me go trick or treating. Can I tell you something? It was great. Parents, come back home, analyze the candy. You get to keep the good stuff. Give your kids the stuff you don't want to have anyway. That's good stuff. Listen, you get the good stuff.
My daughter's only 3, and so she doesn't even know which is the good stuff. And so, yeah.
Yeah, baby, let your daddy hold on this. We'll see if this is good stuff. No, you don't want to eat this. You don't want no stickers and Butterfinger. No, you don't want that. And folks, then we come right out of this into Thanksgiving. We come into the month of November, another great month to show people. And one of the things that I wanted to share with you, to the Florida Cocoa family, I'm instituting something in the month of November and December called Cocoa Cares. I'm asking every member of Florida Cocoa, if you would, you see it on the screen, to sow a seed of $10. The proceeds will go to a few things. One is the Heart of Florida Youth Ranch that we have in Ocala. We have the Church of God Home for Children and our Spirit Care Ministry. I just need everybody to sow $10. Every dollar we raise will go to these wonderful people because we want children to know. And I know people say, Jesus wasn't born in November, December. He was born. The point is, I want to make sure we touch them and let them know that they are important to us and we need them to survive. And then we close out the year, Christmas. You have another great month where you can reach people. And I hope that everybody right now is finding ways to say, how can we reach this generation? And he said something this week. If you decide to give out the candy, sure, there are going to be some people who will take the candy and reject our Christ. I understand that. But I would rather them hear about Christ and let them make a decision than them never know they could have made a decision for Christ. And so again, I want to ask you, so Andy, if you don't mind, would you close us out in prayer, buddy?
Yep. Oh, sorry, my contact's
falling. That's my team telling me. Listen, so go back to that team. Listen, I'm asking every church. Many of you know, I'm asking every church this week to have a trunk or treat event. If you come to me in Deerfield, we have church at 9:30. We're not doing it at night. Immediately following service, 9:30 service, we have our trunk or treat. We're going to be in the parking lot with snow cones and different things. Bring your kids. Bring your candy. Also, let me just give a little side note. If you're part of my local assembly, a few weeks ago, I gave select people $1. And I was teaching on the parable of the talents. If you have received my $1, you must now be prepared to give an account for your $1 this Sunday. It will be done this Sunday. So I want you to know, if you follow me at Radiant Living Worship Center, you'll see what happened with $1. You'll see what people did with that $1. We're going to find if somebody put their $1 in the ground and just left it, and what do they do with it? But folks, I tell you this, and I hope you hear my heart. I'm convicted because I think I was a checker. I think I was a checker guy. Listen, he came to church, check. He lifted his hand, check. He came to the altar, check. He cried a little bit, check. Folks, listen, again, just a full disclosure. This is what Ministry Misfit did to me. They started convicting me. I said, I think I resemble that remark. I didn't do it. Yes, listen, we are in this time of the 3 R's. Thank you, Sister Adrian. Listen, we want you to recommit, folks. We want you to reconnect. We want to be reconnected to the Great Commission. Florida Cocoa, let's close out this year strong. Man, I thought about all the people who died of COVID, all the families that have been destroyed, and I thought about, man, how many of those families didn't have Christ? And they didn't have Christ not because they had a virus. They didn't have Christ because the church didn't tell them they had Christ had already won the victory. I don't want that to be our legacy. And I'm convinced, I may be wrong, that God is using this to judge the church. This season that we've been in, it was a wake-up call to the church that I've not intended for you just to be buildings and bucks, but I wanted you to be bodies that were redeemed by the blood. And I hope that you can reach out to Brother Andrew. If you do consulting as well, don't you?
Yeah, we do both. Through CSRM, we do sports rec fitness consultations. I also do digital ministry consultations and podcast consultations as well. So, there's a couple of different areas. If you go to the CSRM website, I believe it's under, I can't remember because it's a new website, but you can find the consultation information there. You can also contact me. And, if it's an area that I cannot help you with, we have people that can. Dr. Greg Linville is the foremost expert. He's referred to as the sports ministry apologist. We've got an international network of, I don't even remember how many we're at now. If you're looking for schooling, we've got connections there. You can even get your degree through our program. Dan Stauffer is our new executive director. He's a church planner. He's been a pastor forever. He's not forever. He's much younger than the rest of our staff. I'm the young guy, but he's young as well. He's done a lot in ministry is what I mean. And so he's very good at doing this stuff as well. And he will be able to connect you. We've got some regional roundtables in certain areas, currently just in Ohio, but we're hoping to expand that out as well. Debbie Brown in Houston is like the fitness guru as far as ministry is concerned. We've got an extensive network that, we will be able to connect the right person to your church and your congregation, depending on what it is you're needing. So, yeah.
Listen, folks, I'm going to make sure I get all this information, and as I do, I'll make sure we send it out to everyone. He has been incredible. I want you to continue to lift this young man up in prayer again. He was just faithful on Twitter. I follow him on Twitter. You would always follow him. Is it at Ministry Misfit?
Mr. Misfit, yeah, no S.
Yeah, no S. Listen, folks, good stuff. If you get chances, some good stuff. I go through and I look at it. Great stuff on there. Listen, man, God, if you don't mind, close us out in a word of prayer.
Will do, and I will say I wish I was in an area where we could do snow cones this weekend.
Listen, I'll take a picture and put it on there and go.
Yeah, it's way too cold for snow cones.
Yeah.
Well,
if you get a chance to Florida, man, come on down and see us. We listen, I mean this. We're going to have to get you down here, man, because we've had fun, and I believe you can have some real fun face to face.
Yeah. I'm okay with no alligators.
Listen, your kids would enjoy going to one of our gator lands. So listen, it'd be a great time. Yeah. Listen, man, again, I love you so much. Go ahead and close us out in prayer.
Dear Lord, thank you for this time, for the opportunity to be able to just talk, to connect, to be able to make use of the connection there on Twitter and now face to face as well. I pray that you be with this church, be with the bishop, with all the churches under his care, that you would guide them, that you would keep them safe in the midst of all the stuff going on, and that you would bless the ministry, that you would allow them to be fruitful, and that people would be benefited by both this conversation, the work that they're doing this weekend with the trunk or treats and everything else. So I pray that you guide them and bless them in your name. Amen.
Amen. I love you to life, folks. Again, Andrew, thank you so much. And we're definitely going to keep up with you. So I'm going to tell you, like I tell all my friends, don't act like you don't know me when you see my email or when I call you. Don't be saying, oh, Lord, there he go again. Because I just
got to figure out which is the real you on Instagram is all I got to figure out now.
You know what? Let me say this. Any of you fake Instagrammers out there, I'm not that famous. I need y'all to leave me alone. People call me a bishop. They're calling me again. Listen, the only person you want to be like is Jesus, and I am not him, so please leave me alone. Listen, man, I love you to life. To everyone else, listen, we'll be here again on next Tuesday, here on another Teaching Tuesday. But until we get together again, we know we close this way. I'm praying for you. You pray for me. I won't harm you with words from my mouth. You are important to me, and I need you to survive. And thank you for keeping us cocoa strong all day long. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.